is the name of our show.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Large Glass. I'm Todd.
I'm Terri.
And this is our weekly show where we bring you a new artist every week to talk about. How y'all doing? Good to see you. Hi, Jess Park. Good to see you. There's
Hello.
Mom
Yes.
hanging out.
Yeah.
I'm wearing the RISD sweatshirt
You
tonight.
are wearing that RISD sweatshirt tonight.
Hi, John.
As promised.
Good to see you. Yep, this is we had said that if we got Allan on the show that I'd get myself a new. I've worn my RISD sweatshirt into the ground. It looks like a rag because I wear it all the time.
Yeah.
So this is my new one.
Right.
So
well, we bought that specifically for the show, but as soon as you got it,
I started wearing it. Yeah, so it's already starting to look a little bit ragged.
Broken in.
Yeah, we're breaking it in.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to do tonight, as we almost always do at the beginning of the show. And I think we should start by opening some wine.
Let's do
and
that.
then we'll get into talking about the other stuff.
Sure.
So as per the usual, Terri has been pre-gaming, so hers is open.
Yes.
But we picked two wines tonight from the Venice region of Italy. And the reason is tonight's artist is in the Venice Biennale, which is probably the single most important show in the world.
Yes.
So that's really incredible and just really an honor to be talking to someone who is featured in that. So I'm going to pour a little for you here.
Why, thank you.
There you go. And then I've got to open mine, which is going to take some time. Memory Vessel's got the vino going. Pumpkin Audrey's here.
Hello.
There's Glenn. Good to see you, Glenn. Everyone is in the house. So, as also promised, tonight we have a painting to give away. This is a big deal. Now, if you are watching us over on either YouTube or Facebook, if you want to be involved in the painting giveaway, you have to come over to Twitch in order to do that, and you have to be a follower on Twitch. Now, Twitch is free. Doesn't cost anything, but you do have to quickly sign up for an account. And the only reason we're doing it that way is because I do like Twitch's interface for giveaways. It runs them in a very sort of well-moderated kind of way. And so you got to come over to the Twitch side of things. So that is twitch.tv/Todd Lambrix. If you'd like to come over and watch from that end, we'd love to have you. I'm going to keep reminding you about that, and I will put that raffle in play in just a few minutes. So I've got a Valpolicella, and you have a Pinot Grigio.
Yes.
We'll see how this goes down. This was nicely rated, but we'll see. This is not my typical go-to, but I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Episode 63, we cannot wait to talk in a little while to Allan Wexler, which I'm very excited for.
Me too.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Tell us what you're drinking in the chat, everybody. Well, okay.
All right.
Ooh, wow, that's a kind of a complex red
Is it?
for Valpolicella,
I
which
feel like mine's a complex white,
well,
but in a different way. It's
we're a
very
complex couple.
pretty. Well, there you go.
Okay, I'll stop being corny.
Okay.
All right, so first of all, let's get that giveaway of the Susan Stillman painting in play. It's going to run for about 55 minutes, so we'll have almost the entire show for you to sign up and get involved in that. And once I get that going, I'm going to show you what that painting actually looks like. There it goes. So Streamlabs is saying a winner will receive Catching Light by Susan Stillman. It's an acrylic painting on wood panel, 10 inches by 8 inches. Susan was generous enough to donate this to our show to sort of entice people to follow. So if you're out there watching the show tonight, make sure you follow on whatever platform you're on, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. Give us a follow. We would love that. The way you enter this raffle for the Susan Stillman painting is simply type in the chat !raffle, all one word, and then you should drop right in. I don't think you have to put in a number of tickets tonight. You might have to put in !raffle space 1. Give it a try, see what happens, and you should be able to pop into that. We will draw that at the end of tonight, and we'll keep reminding you. No pin winner this week.
No pin winner this week. So there's a couple things, a couple reasons why I think that there was no winner. I tried to pick somebody who is very famous and well known, but it wasn't their typical mark making. And it was a drawing, it wasn't a painting. So
Should I put it up there?
You can put it up there.
All right, so the painting this week was Vincent Van Gogh drawing. Sorry, Vincent Van Gogh drawing.
Yep, Vincent Van Gogh. It's called The Apple Orchard with Lime Tree Behind the Mensing Inn in Zwielu. So that was painted in 1881, and it hangs in a museum in the Netherlands. So,
and just to be clear, this is not the piece you win tonight in the raffle. Okay?
No.
Let's just be clear about that. We do
although
not.
the piece we have is very nice.
It is very nice.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, no, it's absolutely very nice. But I
Yes.
just don't want anyone thinking that they're going to get a Van Gogh drawing for crying out loud.
Yes. Oh my goodness. But yes.
So I wanted to set the mood for tonight by reading something from Allan's most recent book, which was published in 2017, called Absurd Thinking Between Art and Design. Now you can pick this up on Amazon. I'm telling you right now, if you want a beautiful book to add to your art collection, your art book collection, get this. Get this. I love this book. And I was, perusing tonight. I haven't read the entire thing. I've read a fair chunk of it. But I found something tonight, and I think this really does a good job. This paragraph I'm going to read sets a mood for this. I love this. There is a section in here called Construction Documents for the Kitchen Sink. And there's a few paragraphs in here. I'm going to pull something from one of these. Have a listen to this. After we've cooked a big meal, the dishes, pots, and pans that collect create an unappealing pile, a greasy mess in the kitchen. I purchased an aquarium air pump, attached it to the underside of the sink, inserted a plastic tube through a hole in the sink's bottom, and caulked it with silicone. This aerator forces air into the dish soap water. The bubbles climb up and over the pots and pans. The sink becomes an uncontrollable and sensual sculpture that shimmers in the fluorescent light of the kitchen. There are evenings when I sneak a few drops of red food coloring into the water. Our dinner guests find excuses to leave the dining room and enter the kitchen to see the dynamic, bubbling, soapy form. But probably the greatest benefit of this sculpture is that the soapy water, which constantly flows, loosens the grease on the dishes and pots. After only a quick rinse, I can hang them back on the wall. There's a connection here between an artistic sensibility and a design sensibility, and it brings a certain everyday beauty to one's existence. And I get so inspired when I read from this. So go get this, okay? And maybe if you're lucky, I'll read another paragraph later. Okay, let's just show off that Susan Stillman painting really quickly. As per the usual, some of my controls are giving me a little bit of trouble tonight. And we have to thank a supporter.
Oh, we do.
Let's do that first. Let's give our supporter some thanks here. That one's going to be tricky without my buttons. So let me see if I can find that. Hold on a second. Well, that's part of it. Let's see if that works. Hold on. We need to have our... Oh, my gosh. Where's the one that says fireworks? Where's fireworks? There's fireworks. All right. So tonight's featured supporter is Ken Millington. Ken, thank you. We love what you do. And if any of you that are watching tonight want to see a fantastic artist, look up Ken Millington's work. Absolutely brilliant, brilliant painter. Go check out what he's got going on. But thanks, Ken. We really appreciate you following the channel. And looking forward to talking to you in the chat. So let's see if I can get this down without destroying anything now. Hold on a second.
Looks like Carolyn is here.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hello.
How's it going? I don't want to miss anybody in the chat here. So let's put up Susan's painting really quickly. That's also going to take me a minute because...
is it under...
It's right here.
There.
So this is Catching Light. This is the painting that we're raffling off tonight. We're looking forward to giving that away this evening. You have to be a follower, so please do that. And like I said before, if you are watching us on YouTube or Facebook, come over to the Twitch platform to participate, okay? That is twitch.tv/Todd Lambrix, all one word. So come hit that, give us a follow, and then get involved in this raffle. I am going to stop talking now. Should we start talking about who we've got behind the curtain?
We can.
I think that's
We
fine.
kind of name dropped when we...
Well, everybody, come on, everybody knows what's going. We talk about this all week long.
Advertising and talking about it, so it's no surprise. We are thrilled, totally thrilled tonight. So to begin introductions, he has self-described himself as an artist being trapped in an architect's body and vice versa. His career is the culmination of many different arts, all fusing together, from architecture to sculpture to photography to painting to drawing to performance arts to installation and on and on. He is a published author, he's a teacher, he's the recipient of many awards, including the recipient of the Guggenheim Fellowship, the Henry J. Lear Prize, the Chrysler Award for Design and Innovation. He's shown internationally and nationally and internationally. Most recently, he has work up in the 2021 Venice Biennale. It's up until November 21st, and it's a series of installations entitled How Will We Live Together?
And can I add a few things to that?
You sure can.
He's also a fellow RISD alum. Susan Stillman, who has the painting, is also a RISD alum, by the way. But Allan is also a RISD alum, and that is where I first met and was inspired by Allan when he came to do a guest speakership at RISD. And so from that moment on, I think everything that I did certainly changed. But let's lift the curtain, shall we? Allan, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me. That was a fabulous introduction. I'm so thrilled.
Thanks for coming.
And thanks for the great plug for my book.
Oh,
that's the best plug I've ever gotten.
Totally.
I really appreciate it. And you read a great passage. I forgot about that.
Oh, I love it. And actually, all 4 other paragraphs that I didn't read are equally as inspiring and brilliant, I think.
Thank you.
So,
thank you so much.
For sure.
It really, those essays are, when I was at the American Academy in Rome, I was a fellow there in 2005, and I didn't bring my tools except for some X-Acto knives and simple things. Like I brought a few boxes of tools. And I started writing because I was surrounded by fellows who were fiction writers and poets and scholars. I said, well, maybe the written word could be a form of self-expression. So thanks for reading that.
Absolutely.
Most people don't pick up on that small part of my work.
Well, actually, I think that's one of the biggest parts of it for me. And I know I've got a lot to say about that later. I do want to tell everybody in the chat that if you have questions for Allan or comments that you'd like to make towards Allan, certainly write them at any time. We don't have to save them until the end, and we will do our best to sort of relay them to him so he can hopefully answer those. Just keep that in mind. So where do we begin? We've got some. You wanna like start on a couple of pieces from the Venice Biennale?
We can begin there. This is a very big show.
So Allan, you were telling me about this piece that we've got up on the screen right now and how it was reconstructed at the Biennale for you and how it sort of took on a little bit of a new meaning with your work, contextually speaking. I think it's something we're going to cover a lot tonight, but can we talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It was a project I did probably 8 or 9 years ago. I was at an exhibition in Canada, University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. We built this piece, and I thought because the concept of the exhibition that Hashim Sarkis, who was the curator, who's the Dean of Architecture at MIT, invited me to the show. And so we chose this piece because the theme was, how will we live together? And he came up with that theme probably a year before the pandemic began. And it was really about community and how architects can use space, environment to bring people together and not to alienate. Well, this is a piece that was really about it wasn't about social distancing, which has become about now because of the pandemic. It was about psychological distancing. You have 4 people sitting at a table, let's say family dinner, and each person is sitting alone. There's a lack of communication. So I was trying to articulate the kind of lack of communication, and yet the table there are 4 rooms, and each room has 1/4 of the table. So we're all sitting together at the same table, but we're sitting in individual rooms. But here, the difference being here is I purposely placed on each quadrant 1 bottle of ketchup, in another room a bottle of mustard, in another room a salt shaker, and another room a pepper shaker. So it does require that people have to get off their seats and go into another room if they want to put ketchup on their burger. But now because of the pandemic, it becomes something else. It becomes about, social distancing.
Right. And I love this notion that you have to get up to get one of the condiments, because it implies the workload associated, which at one time was probably no workload at all, communication at a table, right? It was the norm. But now it almost seems to say something to the effect of, this has become a kind of task that has become difficult for people.
Yes.
Yes.
So, and
Very much so.
I love how this plan view here illustrates the table, even more so, and the walls are infinite. It's almost completely stopping them from moving from station to station.
Right. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
you first.
A little background on this. My background is architecture, as you said. I studied architecture at RISD, and I have great fondness for RISD, as you do. Here's a drawing of the concept of that table, but it was in a weird way inspired by Mies van der Rohe's brick country house. It's a house that he designed that I've always loved, in which the interior walls pass out through the exterior walls into the gardens and into the outdoor space. So it's about interiority and exteriority. I don't think that's a word, but here I took a typical Levitt house, typical suburban house, and I drop this X on the plan and extend it into infinite space. And it divides the kitchen table into 4 quadrants. So that's the kind of, precedent where, I've gotten that, but I kind of appropriate it for the suburban American family.
Right. And, I'm thinking about the title of the book, about absurd thinking between art and design. And, I love that notion of how, and I've watched a couple of the interviews you've been in. You've talked about some of your influences in the past, like Cage and Duchamp,
very much so.
And this idea of this kind of, well, not so much necessarily with Cage, but certainly with Duchamp, this kind of absurdity that can sometimes be present, and how that functions here. It's really quite nice. Let's.
That word absurd, I was a little concerned about it. I worked with my wife to come up with the title of the book, and we came up with the name Absurd Thinking Between Art and Design. And then just to be safe, we looked online for absurd thinking. And there's a quote by Albert Einstein, and he said that if an idea is not absurd, there's no use for it. So whether you're an artist or a scientist, we need to push our thinking toward the absurd, because that's where ultimately change happens.
I heard you say something in an interview where when a student has what they think is a great idea, a hot idea, that they should temper that a little bit, move it towards what might be a lukewarm idea, and then push it in both directions.
Exactly. You've said it perfectly. Yeah. So that whenever you think you have a great idea, assume it's mediocre, and then see what are the extremes that you can push it towards. So you push it in 2 directions. In that case, toward the hot or the cold, or toward the red or the green, or toward the smooth or the rough,
right?
That kind of thing.
Right.
And then once you think you got to an extreme, you reposition it toward the center again and see if you can push even further.
Gotcha. I'm just getting some notifications from some of my friends that they might have a little bit of a video lag, and that looks like it could be something on our end a little bit. So thank you, John, for putting that out there. I noticed that today Comcast had a nationwide outage, which I know affected my internet for a better part of the morning, and then all day today it's kind of had some glitchiness to it. So fingers crossed on this. Right now I'm still reading okay, but sorry to interrupt that, but thank you. So yeah, some people are also saying that we're having some issues. Okay. Well, that's, we'll do the best we can. So let's keep going, because I love to think about this idea of how the table and how dining and how food kind of give to us something that is there's so much around the notion of eating with people, the notion of the kitchen, the notion of the table as a gathering place, the community associated with those things. There's even a notion in the Futurist Cookbook, which we'll talk about a little bit later, about food as optimism. And so, when I look at this piece that we've got up on the screen right now, I can't help but think about that because I feel like you are making an offering here to the person in front of
Yeah.
you to some degree. But what were you thinking about when you made this one? I mean, this is a very different piece from the last one we just looked at. I know they're from different times, but can you talk a little bit about this one?
I think I can. It's a project that is about humility and about being a good host and giving offering to your guests. And it's probably inspired in a strange way by my interest in the Japanese tea ceremony, where the host prepares and expends a lot of energy and prepares the tea and so on, and doesn't drink the tea. So there's something about giving of yourself and the weight on your shoulders of this table, this cantilever table. And so I started with an ordinary kitchen table. And then, one of the problems, the things about my work is because I try to balance between sculpture and architecture or between the fine and the applied arts, I start with a functional element and then I turn it into sculpture by defunctionalizing it. But then the architect in me, the problem solver in me, has to then solve the problem of the legs that have been cut off in terms of a support. So I invent a problem and then I try to solve that problem. So it's a balance between the functional and the poetic.
I love that. And the offer,
in that way.
I love that also in the notion of the offering. In a lot of ways, that's the role of the artist, right? On some level, I mean, there is this notion that we make something, right? But then there's this offering to the rest of the world, and it's kind of a generosity thing. We're vulnerable when we do it, but our viewer, the person we're presenting to, kind of comes to the table, right, to kind of complete that picture.
I like that. Yeah, the viewer comes to the table.
Right.
And it's a conceptual table. It's an intellectual table.
Right. Really quickly, Carolyn Thau, thanks for resubscribing on that. And no, you didn't miss the raffle. It's running right now. So you can get in on that raffle for a painting if you type in the chat, !raffle. So, okay, let's get into some other stuff here because I was really curious about this futurist cookbook project that you did. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know about the futurist cookbook, I think I have an image of the original futurist cookbook here. So, do you want to talk about this, or do you want me to talk about it, Allan? I mean, I know that
I'd like you to talk about it. It's more fun.
Oh, good.
Because you're so
great.
I mean, your comments are so on target that I might learn something.
Well, I doubt that, but thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Well, Marinetti's Futurist Cookbook, which was published in 1932, Marinetti was a poet, and created this cookbook, which at the time took off as a sort of, I won't say a bestseller, but it really sold a lot of copies, and it was adopted as a kind of cookbook. But Marinetti's joke that was sort of embedded in this was he was using food as sort of a raw material for making art, and not in a physical kind of literal way. It does function like a cookbook, but it's like a manifesto for how we should treat food, eat food. He didn't believe in eating pasta. He wanted to eliminate pasta from the diet because it made you heavy and slowed your thinking. But this was taken on as a very serious thing. But those that were sort of in the know or understood Marinetti realized that there was a joke here, right? So Allan, then you took this, and I'm gonna throw it to you. You took this book in 2021 or 2020, I believe.
Right, just recently. Yeah, within a year or two ago.
Okay, and then you decided to sort of redefine what was going on in it, right? So I'm going to show a couple of pictures of stuff that was based on that. But like I've got this one. I've done nothing but talk.
No, that's okay.
You're not even here. I'm running you over.
No, not at all.
I'm terrible. Anyway, I know you don't like it when I do that. You feel like I put you on the spot. Jim Osmond is here, and he says, I really like how Allan's work mashes up form and content, kind of uber cubist. John Park says, I also love how the elaborateness of the apparatus emphasizes the sincerity of the offering. John.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah, that's so good.
Beautiful. And I like Jim's comment of, can you repeat what Jim said? Hi, Jim. How are you?
Jim,
I haven't seen you in a while.
Jim says he loves how your work mashes up form and content, kind of uber cubist. Uber cubist. I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's great.
Well, this piece is Carving Away Darkness. There's a longer title, which I did not write down in my notes. I apologize for that. And I was actually thinking about what John had just said, in that, like, the mechanism, the hardware, it kind of functions like an appendage for each piece, right? A necessary appendage. But then what happens, and this kind of goes a little bit to Jim's comment, is that the form and the content mashup is sort of like, well, obviously the form, we could talk about how the appendage holds the flashlight, but the illumination as a more ethereal, less tangible thing kind of becomes that content, but they're fused as one, right?
Yeah.
I love
Great.
that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Imagine eating a dinner where it's complete darkness. The only illumination is the food you're eating. And it's spotlighted by these small flashlight attachments to your dinnerware. Imagine, so the light in the coffee cup is bright white, and then you slowly pour black coffee into that coffee cup. It becomes a kind of magical moment. I also thought of a project that's an alternative to this, where you would put surface microphones either on the underside of the table or on each utensil. I'm not much of a technologist. I'm pretty primitive and low tech, but I think that could be something that's very doable. So it's when you put down a fork on a table, it would reverberate and create a symphonic sound. And it might be that the dinner party is not just determined by a culinary artist, a chef, but also by a composer who would compose the dinner with sound. And that's a little bit of a riff on some of the futurist dinners, sound activated environments. And I also thought of a table. This is a more recent thing, just a few days ago, designed like a violin, where the membrane of the tabletop surface is shaved away and contoured with an opening. And so when you place something on, the table would reverberate as a drum or as a violin body, that kind of thing.
Well, that's gorgeous. I love that. There's something about so there, of course, we have John Cage, right? We've got the John Cage influence creeping in, for sure.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
John Cage once said that music is the presence and absence of sound in time, or something to that effect. That might not be an absolute quote, but his sort of he had mentioned, well, I'm going to butcher this right now. Let me see if I can remember this exactly. But he had once visited the anechoic chamber at Harvard, and this is a pivotal moment for him as an artist, as a composer, because he realized in an anechoic chamber that it was different than something that was acoustical. Like, we typically, for those of you who don't know, an anechoic chamber is a room that has been treated in such a way that it completely voids the space of all sound. Spending time in there can actually have psychological impact on you. You can hear your own blood flowing through your veins. That's how quiet it is. And he realized that this was not so much an acoustic experience as it was a transformational one.
Right.
And it sort of changed the way he worked. It moved him towards things like the I Ching and chance operations and so on and so forth, and really sort of became the emphasis of his work. Anyway, that being said, I like how now all of a sudden the elements of the dinner table become these musical pieces. But these are great.
These are great. I wasn't viewing them So, and before I knew that they were taken from the Futurist Cookbook, and I'm looking at the title and it clearly says that. But when I was looking at these, I was looking more at the light as like the nourishment and how that hit it. I was, you're depicting the vessels and talking about the exploration of how things fill the vessels, the way the color changes in the light. But I was looking at the way the light was sitting on things, and I just felt like in a society that itself is nourishment, the way we perceive things, and this was illuminating perception. And that's kind of that's what I was looking at with this.
I love that. Love it.
And I've seen it in some of your other pieces too, with the table with the light and such. Like that's one of my favorite pieces. I'm excited to get to that one, but yeah, gorgeous work.
I like that comment too that Terri just made, because I was thinking of it in a completely different realm, and I love how many notes, for pardon the pun, that this work hits, because on some level I see it as almost illuminating an absence, but also becoming a presence at the same time.
That's exactly how I was seeing it, because the way that the light hits this, and I know theater, I feel is very integral to your work. I feel that sense of drama and theatricality in some of these pieces.
But just like Marinetti said, the food should be treated as optimistic.
Yes.
And this kind of possesses that optimism,
That's
which I think
true.
is gorgeous. I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ben says, how did you get that background so black? Not even a hint of light shines upon it. Yeah, that's actually really quite good. In terms of how it's
I think when I photographed it, I actually photographed it in the darkness, and the only illumination was coming from the flashlight.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I can't remember, but I'm glad you're showing these pieces. They're quite new, within less than 6 months old. The ones you've been showing, which I'm really pleased.
Are these in Venice right now?
No, not the food related projects.
Gotcha.
The table worn by one person is in Venice.
Right. Okay. So can I jump into another Duchamp thing? Is that okay?
Yeah, love Duchamp.
So I'm of course gonna jump over to this one. And I'm noticing a little bit of lag on what you're seeing on my side, but I've got Fountain up on the screen right now, and of course, I can't make that reference without thinking about him, right? But there's a very different kind of piece.
Oh yeah. I don't see it. I'm seeing still the glass with the flashlight.
I noticed that. I have a feeling that might be part of my lag problem, but
and I think now it's a wine glass. I'm seeing that.
Oh, that's so strange.
Weird, yeah.
It's very, very slow.
It's odd.
Let me just see if I can make it click over. Okay, well, anyway, it'll catch up. I'm sure it will.
But do other people see that, or is it just me that's not?
Everybody on the broadcast is seeing the fountain piece, which is the glasses that are held at different elevations with the continuous pipe conduit running through them. Yep.
So it's only me that's lagging on my screen.
Yeah, that's odd. That's so odd. I'm looking at it. I can see where you're lagging, actually.
Okay.
All right. Well, hopefully that will catch up. The good news is we're still together. We haven't lost the call. So in this piece, though, when I see that it's called Fountain, and I start thinking about Duchamp, and I start thinking about how that piece had a certain kind of there was a tongue-in-cheek approach to that. There was a challenge in the way he sort of presented that piece. Yours has a very different approach. And maybe I'm making the relationship that shouldn't be there necessarily. But can you kind of describe to everybody how this piece functions so they can understand it?
Yeah. It's interesting. I guess I titled it Fountain. And I hadn't realized the reference to Duchamp's fountain, the urinal. I love that, but it wasn't in my mind, the Duchampian reference when I worked on that. I've done other projects where I took a coffee cup, I dropped it from 1 meter onto the floor in memory of Duchamp's 3 standard stoppages, which I don't know if you guys know about, but he dropped a string. Now it's caught up. He dropped a string from 1 meter off the ground and then made a template of that string, that kind of chants stopped piece of time. He made 3 of them. They were called 3 standard stoppages. And so in memory of Duchamp, I dropped a coffee cup from 1 meter off the ground. It broke into 16 or 20 fragments. And then I glued each of those fragments onto a white paper cup. And the idea being that 16 people can drink from different cups, drinking from the same cup. So, and then I had another alternative version, which is in the Futurist Cookbook, which is not finished, but one version where I ship those coffee cups around the world. And this was during the height of the pandemic when we were all on Zoom. And then at a certain moment, we all get on a Zoom call and we drink coffee from the same coffee cup on Zoom.
Yeah.
So, and I had a whole scenario where I would drop the cup onto a map of the world and then find the closest neighbor to that fragment and ship it FedEx to that person and then have them drink coffee on a certain time, a certain day.
It's fantastic. I love
when
that.
we're all together. So we drink together alone, that kind of thing. But this one called Fountain, is really based on the very simple principle: water seeks its own level. If we look back at my work, and also the book Absurd Thinking is organized according to those topics. But it's, I've worked over my career with issues like earth, air, fire, water. Those are the elements of architecture, and human psychology, vegetation, and so on. So I abstract those. So I keep returning to water as a primary source of inspiration for me. I had an exhibition at Ronald Feldman Gallery a while in the 80s called Buckets, Sinks, and Gutters, where I'd spent 2 years experimenting with how you can harvest water from the sky, bring it out of the earth, or divert water on the earth's surface. And there were various studies and experiments. This kind of comes out of that period, although this is a brand new piece done in maybe 2 years ago, where I had this residency at a glass blowing facility in New Jersey called Wheaton Art Center,
right,
in Millville, New Jersey. And I spent a year with people who blew glass for me. But before I blew glass, I wanted to get my hands into glassware. And I collected discarded glasses and glassware I have a studio on the North Fork of Long Island, and we bring our garbage to the dump, and there's a recycling center. So every Sunday when it's open, I would go to the recycling center and harvest the glassware from people, and I would make projects out of it. So, and then I started learning how to drill holes in glass. And this is a project where the glassware, the rims of the glasses are all exactly the same height, because water seeks its own level. So as water goes into into the inlet hose, it will travel across and out the outlet. So it's about flow, and it's about gravity, and it's about water seeks its own level. It's also a little bit of a riff on a project I did, which has called Coffee Seeks Its Own Level, where 4 coffee cups are connected together with tubing, and then there's an X-shaped tube in the middle. And then if 4 people drink coffee together and one person lifts the cup before the other 3, the coffee overflows the other 3 cups. So it requires a kind of democracy or a level playing field where all 4 people have to lift the cup simultaneously to drink coffee.
I've always loved that piece. I don't have that one in the slides tonight because we were going to keep it in a certain area, but that piece to me is a beautiful sort of exercise in people sort of working together.
Yeah.
The other thing that you said that I really think stands out to me is somehow I knew 3 standard stoppages had to sort of be in your list of major influences. And for a couple of reasons, other than chance operations, a big one that made me think of that is in that piece, he drops the meter-long piece of string on the ground.
Oh, yes, right.
He not only makes the drawing of the string, but then he uses the drawing to make a template, a wooden template that he cuts out. And he uses that template to make a map on the large glass, his
Exactly.
piece, right? Now,
Yep.
here's the beautiful part, though, that made me connect to Allan, is he made this amazing box to put the 3 standard stoppages in and store them. And so when
Yep.
you look at some of Allan's work and you see the boxes that he creates for like the T-square or the picnic on the bike or, you know, these different things, they're there, you know, like I can see that connection. It's just, it's so good.
And also that those templates remind me of early, you know, T-squares without the T, you know, very much so.
Or like a French curve, you know, like
And French curves, right.
Right. I'm going to see how quickly your screen catches up over here, but I'm going to move on to some pieces that were done, you know, in the Wheaton residency that you did. So some of the glass pieces that were done there, because I think it would be good to kind of talk about those. I also have the video from the Wheaton Center up, so maybe we can take a second and show that. What do you think of that? Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can pull that up. So, do you want to just give a little quick thing on how you spent your time there?
I think it's the video of the blow molds, the wooden blow molds.
That's the one. Yep.
Yep. So you know, I'm working at the glass place for about half a year, and then I realized, you know, I had to get my hands in it, but I'm not a glass blower. But I kind of supervise the glass blowing as a kind of composer. But I could make wood, you know, I'm a woodworker. My studio has a lot of woodworking tools. I was able to make the molds to blow glass into out of plywood and fiberglass. And then, so I tried to make vessel forms out of sheets of 1/4-inch cherry plywood. Usually use cherry to make blow molds because it doesn't burn as quickly. Basically, you make the traditional blow mold, you would take a cherry tree usually, you cut it, you'd split it, and then you carve the vessel form inside, and then you would hinge it together with some leather, and then the glass blower would put the molten glass into the mold and blow into the wooden hollow form. So I started making hollow forms out of cherry plywood, and then the forms, you soak them in water, and then you can blow glass into them. And I'm trying to get a curved organic vessel form, but I'm using flat planar material. So as Jim Osman said, it's kind of cubistic. It's pixelated.
Right.
And I'm trying to get closer and closer to an organic form. I start with a cubic form, and slowly the facets become more and more smaller and smaller. So you can imagine the first vessel is, quote, 60 pixels per inch or dots DPI, and it goes up to 300 DPI, you know, or, you know, 600 DPI. So that's what you'll see in the video.
Well, you know, and the video is actually running right now as you're talking. I turned the volume down on it so you could kind of narrate it. So I know you can't see it right now, but I've got it looping.
Oh, okay.
And what I love about that, and I'm curious to know what you think about this, is when you talk about this idea of the pixelization and this idea of trying to get a round form from something that is to some degree planar. Yeah.
Right.
I think this kind of goes towards a little bit of some of your other sensibilities when it comes to the mechanism and these appendages and allowing a certain amount of the process to show in the finished product rather than going for this slick finished product that doesn't really reveal where it came from.
It's so perfectly described. I mean, it's what I'm all about is, you know, maybe it has to do with my interest in pedagogy and teaching, is to reveal the process and not hide it. And maybe it's a little bit of ego. It shows a lot of work and labor. It's not seamless. You see the imperfections. You see the actual process of creation step by step. So none of the construction techniques are hidden. They're all revealed. And so you actually said it more clearly than I could say it. Well, that's so true.
Well, thank you.
So much of my work. It's also a little bit like the continuity of life. When you look at a early silent film, and we're so used to, we're used to video format now, but silent films were 18 frames a second. And then later on, it got to be 24 frames a second, but we could perceive a kind of jerkiness. You could almost see a black space between each individual frame. And so and that's very much about the tea ceremony. The tea ceremony is a series of frames that are seamlessly reconstructed in a very smooth fashion. But with a great observation, you can see each step of the continuity of drinking tea or of life or of construction. So I try to show those steps. And so that bicycle for picnicking is, you see each fragment of a meal.
Gotcha. John Park in our chat says, obviously the conceptual is of primary importance in your work, but there is also beauty in the resulting forms. Where does that ratio of considerations fall in your thinking when creating a work? And I have a feeling I know where you're going to go with this, but I want to hear what you say.
Yeah, but thank you for that compliment. I think it's a great compliment to kind of, it is about a balance between the conceptual and the visual. And I think, especially architects are afraid to use that word beauty or beautiful. And so I really appreciate making something beautifully. And I do get great joy out of putting together something. Sometimes I become too good at construction, and then I have to try another tool or another step or do something differently, because it's the awesomeness of learning something for the first time that is exciting. And when you get a little too good at it, so things like a repair, I can repair a piece of furniture perfectly so you wouldn't see the repair, but it would be a disappointment for me. So I like to make repairs that are visible or to show how things are constructed. I don't mind when the glue oozes out between two joints, when you're assembling something.
Right. It's almost like Kitsuji, where, the break is celebrated.
That's right.
Yeah. There's also something you mention a lot. I'm going to move into a new image here. I'm realizing I'm lagging on my images. There's something you mention in one of the interviews I saw with you, and I realized how closely connected our teaching is, and that is this notion of the making as the thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so, but there was another question asked in that same interview where, and you don't hear the interviewer ask the question, but he asks you what you think art is. I think that was the question. There was something in there. It's a tough question to kind of always get at for all of us. We struggle with that question, but it had something to do with the notion of the differences between art and design. And of course, we can answer that question. But I'm wondering if this notion of, the essence of the space between those two things is this notion that the making functions as the thinking first and foremost, because the artist has the license to do that. Is that like?
So right on target. Someone describing my work called me a thinkerer. And I think that's a phrase that comes out of some scientists who use that phrase. So thinking and making happening simultaneously. That I think artists their hands are like their brain. I think in Melville's book on Moby Dick, there's a wonderful passage. I wish I had it in front of me, I'd read it. But there's a wonderful passage about the ship's carpenter, I forgot his name, who makes the leg for Captain Ahab, the wooden leg for Captain Ahab. And he describes the fingers of this craftsman. The brain is in his fingers as he crafts this peg leg, this wooden leg. I have to find that and I will send it to you. But it's a beautiful passage.
I mean, anyone in this chat right now that knows me is going to roll their eyes because I always make this reference, but there's a great neuroscientist named Fred Wilson who wrote a book called The Hand. And the hand, the basic idea behind the hand is that your digits, your fingers, your hands, when activated and in motion, are actually just as important in the brain's development and the idea centers of the brain as the brain is in activating the hands. And it's actually a two-way street. It's really an incredible read. Memory Vessel in our chat says, loving the glassblowing discussion. Having done glassblowing, love the use of process-based in your experience accessing your access point. It's kind of cool, actually. Yeah.
Nice.
So, so with the making is thinking thing, I think that there is something to be said for this idea that just getting this going is enough to kind of start fueling the creative process.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Right. Okay. So,
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the creative process is fueled by the purchase of a new tool. It's very strange. I might buy a tool, and that kind of tool is a lever that pries ideas out of my mind. It's like this crowbar, and I'm kind of prying things out as I use it. I try not to have ideas before I begin. It's something I try to get my students to do is how do you start making and not thinking and let the making become thinking?
do you think that's because the process involved with the tool opens that door? In other words, there's a way in which the tool is supposed to be used, and once you acquire that tool, you say, "Oh, now I see how this could work."
Yeah. It's totally the feedback loop between the tool and the mind and the material.
Can I just take a second to remind everybody in the chat that we're giving away that Susan Stillman painting tonight. Now, here's how you get in on that if you're not here yet. 1, you type in the chat the following: !raffle, all one word, and hit enter. And it should enter you into the raffle for that. So don't forget, because there's only about 8 minutes left in the timer for that. So you want to be in there. Also, you have to be a follower to do that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the conversation. So let's see. It looks like your window's keeping up with mine a little bit better at this point, Alan, although I have the one on the screen right now with the 2 large glass jugs around your neck with the valves on the bottom.
No, I'm seeing a one with the fabric pouch.
Right. It'll come shortly, though, I'm sure of it.
I know which one you're talking about. It's called vesicles.
Yes.
Right.
That's a great title.
So,
I don't deny that there is humor in my work, and I don't fight it. I don't try to be funny or humorous. That comes out of the work, because when you push ideas, they are riffing on the status quo and transformation of that. So there's some humor in these things. But why would you take a vessel, and instead of pouring it out the top, there it is. I'm seeing it now, and put faucets, integrate it with faucets and wear it on your neck. Of course, it refers also to the, a lot of original devices for transporting liquids or gases came from the body or from animal organs, bladders and things like that. So in a way, I'm a little bit externalizing internal organs. So, it's about conveying liquids and riffing a little bit on the organs, like the one you saw before, which is called Breath, was very much about the art of glass blowing, which is you blow your breath into molten glass. And then now it's frozen, but it retains the glass blower's breath. And then now I wear that glass form and blow my breath into it. There's a little Duchampian thing there, which he did that bottle of fresh air.
Yeah, you're reading my mind.
I forgot about that.
It was like 30 cc's of Paris air or something like that.
Yes, that's the one.
Right?
Yes, Paris air.
Yeah,
yes.
Paris air. And then on top of that, there's also this notion of, in the Tantanay, there's the illuminating gas. Right?
Yes. Oh my God, you're right.
And so what I love about that, though, here's what's great about that is I think what he's emphasizing, and your work is making me think of this now. I didn't realize this before, but there's something in what's invisible. So if he's going to sell me a glass vial of 30 cc's of Paris air, right? Then I'm taking a leap to believe in something that's not there. And in a lot of ways, that's the whole art experience, which Duchamp did such a great job of revealing for us, right?
Wow,
so
beautiful.
And seeing you wear these on your neck, though, right now, makes me realize that here it is again, but in a completely different form.
Yes, perfect. That's great.
I love that. You started to say something a minute ago. Did Did you?
Did I? Oh,
No, I was saying
Terry.
Terry was starting to say something a
Oh,
second
yeah,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah, it was more of a process thing because I'm trying to imagine you in your studio. And, one thing always like to ask artists when they come on the show is like describing a typical day. And you're talking about getting like a new tool. Like, what happens when you do get a new tool? Like, do you go out to the studio and then do you start drilling things? Then you're like looking
Yes.
at it and then you're like, okay, well, can I stack it on? Like, what are sketchbooks involved at all, or is this mostly like this feedback loop that keeps going between you
Well,
and the tools and what you're working with?
yeah, I love this. Great question. I do draw, and my go-to format is a stack of 8.5 by 11 white bond paper, Xerox paper, because I never was good at drawing inside of a sketchbook because I'm too nervous about messing up the book, and you can't rearrange the pages. So if it's a scrap of paper and I don't like it, I could crumple it up and throw it away.
Okay.
But ripping a page out of a sketchbook, it's more difficult.
A lot of
Anyway,
pressure, yeah.
so I do sketch, but the sketches, sometimes I sketch and sometimes I do drawings and then build from those drawings, but often disappointed when I build from a drawing and I'm too precisely, like part of the art of architecture is being able to make a drawing, get building department approval and then build from it. But I always found it difficult, that translation from the drawing to reality. So the times I've built like larger structures, sometimes I make drawings and then I put the drawing aside and then use it. I just base the construction on memory rather than the precision of the drawing. Because I seem sometimes to lose something in the translation and then it reinvents itself in a new way. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It
this
does.
idea between drawing and reality. But in terms of sketching, there was a project I did in the 80s, like I think 1988, called Chair a Day. And every day for 16 days, I built a chair. And in that project, each day I would determine like a tool. So one day, and it was right at the time when I bought my first Bosch jigsaw. The ones that are like
such a good jigsaw. Such a good jigsaw.
Great tool.
Yeah.
And I now have two of them. I still have the original one. They're workhorses, and I used it to make a chair. So I would take a sheet of plywood and very quickly draw the profiles of the chair. And then with the jigsaw, the Bosch jigsaw, I would cut out the profile as quickly as I could, not very precisely. And then that would be like, I cut all the 6 faces of the chair, the back, the sides, the seat, and so on. Those I could cut out in like an hour and a half. Then the rest of the 8-hour time was trying to fit them together and finger joint them together because they were so uneven. And then so it's about imprecision and precision. So the Bosch jigsaw was like a quick sketch. I used it as a sketching tool. So those chairs, 16 chairs, 16 days, I had sprayed by an auto body shop in flat gray to imply that they were like graphite pencil drawings. And it always remained as one piece. It wasn't like 16 individual pieces because some of the chairs were not that interesting. Some were interesting, but together it was about the process of forcing myself to do something in limited period of time. Now that is very much based on John Cage's project called Indeterminacy, if you know that piece, where he read 90 stories of different lengths, each story told within 1 minute of time. So it's very much a time-based piece. That clearly, I owe credit to John Cage for that.
I like that relationship a lot. I also liked what you said about how you would make a drawing of a plan for something that would be built, but then the building of it came from, rather than referencing the drawing directly, you would allow the memory to sort of influence what you were doing. And that step right there, that wedge, I'm not going to call it a wedge seems negative, but that implementation of the brain, all of a sudden now that's where the artist kind of comes in between the design element, which I really like. I have the illuminated table up on the screen right now. And that's one that, is that in Venice right now, or that's not in Venice?
No, that's in, stored in my studio right now.
But what I like about this is the relationship between this and the carving away memories piece, right? And the light play on the various implements that are on the table.
Yeah, yeah. Those, that came from kind of same period, one after the other.
So with this one, though, we have a light source from the bottom. And what's hard for me to make out in this piece, and I'm hoping you can clarify a little bit, is that I believe the light source is so bright it's able to shine through the ceramic plate. It's able to shine through the opaque surfaces. And it's different levels of light coming through. Is that right?
Yeah, well, yes. And underneath the table, and when you approach the table from a distance, and I think I might have a photograph of it, hard to photograph because there's an underside, which is very important. There are these black conical forms that have electrical cords. Yeah, there you go. You can see them in this photograph. There are electrical cords coming out. Now those utensils and dinnerware are glass. They're transparent.
Oh.
So what I did is I cut openings into the tabletop surface, and they sit into the table. And the light sources are unique to each of those shapes. So each one is illuminated, and then there's a dimmer that controls the amount of light that passes through the food. So if you cut cucumbers at thin slices, you're going to see the cross section through the cucumber, and you'll get a little bit of that reflection in the space, that the light will turn the greenish color of the cucumber.
Gotcha.
So it's really about the kind of food. And if you have red wine in that glass, it really glows a beautiful red color. The light goes through the color of wine. You know, if you look at wine in the light and you swirl it around, and you see how beautiful the color is.
Yeah.
Even white wine has a beautiful glistening color to it. And if you hold it up to the light, and it's part of the multi-sensual experience of eating.
Right. And I still want to keep pointing out here, because I cannot get away from the notion of this idea of honesty in the work. And the reason I'm making that connection is because here again, the chords are present, the lights are present. This is really about not only doing a thing, but showing us how that thing is done and making the reveal part of the work.
Totally.
And to that end, and this is something, I mean, I know we're coming up on our 9 o'clock hour here, and there's one other thing I'd like to try and get in here, and it's a good point, I think, to get to now, is this notion of visual literacy in for us, in our culture, as artists in the United States, and what's missing. Or what almost, I shouldn't say what's missing, but the difficulties I think associated with being artists here versus being an artist, say, in Europe, or being an artist somewhere else. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but we struggle here. And one of the reasons why Terri and I do this show is because we want to sort of help to foster, promote, make accessible the notion of visual literacy.
I love it. I'm so passionate about that topic.
I know that. And I feel like your work, by showing us this process, by bringing your teaching into the work and finding that fine line between art and design, you're setting that up. But I'm trying to find the words, and I feel like you know them better than I do on this one.
Well, who is it? Was it Joseph Kasuth or not just? Who is the other person who works with just work?
On Koara?
No, Joseph Kasuth, he said, learn to read art. In public education, at least in the United States, it's undervalued in most situations. The great educator Howard Gardner talks about 7 kinds of intelligences, and one is visual literacy. And I don't think we respect that enough among little kids with early childhood education.
Right.
Visual literacy.
Right.
And throughout your education, it's not stressed. So I really feel like, I know that word to make work that's pedagogic is an insult sometimes for artists, but I think we all teach, we all preach, we're all shamans, we're all out to change the world. It's our job. And so to be a pedagogue I think is a great thing for an artist to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you're hitting someone over the head and saying, that with a heavy hand, it can have a light touch. But I don't think that's should be considered an insult when your work is pedagogic. Of course, it could be heavy-handed. That's another top issue.
Well, it's funny. I don't know if this person is here in the chat right now, but I remember years and years and years ago, there's somebody in our chat that is an old friend of mine. It's Moped Vagrant. And I remember once we went into a museum, and I can't remember if it was the Philadelphia Museum. I think it was the Philadelphia Museum, but it might have been a different museum. And we were walking up the stairs, and he reached down at the marble trim on the stairs that lined where the stairs meet the wall.
Uh-huh.
And it had been rubbed away just slightly with an indentation from all of the shoes that were pressed against the wall going up over time. There was an indentation there. And he reached down and he put his hand in that space and just rubbed it. He's like, wow, look at that. And it was at that moment that I realized that that's what an artist does.
Yeah.
Is an artist says, look at this, look at this, look at this, and shows us sides of the world that would otherwise either be totally overlooked or gives us something totally new to look at. And I remember that moment to this day as being such a pivotal moment in my ability to look at things.
Yeah.
Which is just, And
So well said. So well said. And especially my work, because I bridge that gap between art and design. I take things that we're very familiar with and that are ubiquitous and everyday, and then I just experiment with them. Like for the past 8 or 9, maybe since the beginning of the summer, I've been working with a lowly ceramic restaurant-ware coffee cup and saucer. And just last week, I covered the saucer in mass. It's a crazy way of doing it because my students could do that in minutes using, software programs like Maya or whatever, or SolidWorks. So I'm trying to flatten a coffee cup and make a kind of Mercator projection or a Dymaxion map of a coffee cup.
Right.
So I do this kind of half-assed version where I tape the whole cup with masking tape, inside and outside. Then I spray it with flat white paint, so it will take pencil. And then I grid it off and I number each of the squares. And then I cut everything out and I flatten the coffee cup. Then I scan the flattened version of the coffee cup. And then I cut it back out again and reconstruct it into a coffee cup. So when I get back to my studio on Long Island, I'm going to pour coffee in it and see what happens.
Oh, I love that. And I actually saw the pictures of that process. I think you have them on Instagram, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
I do. Yeah, I just put it up on Instagram.
And for those of you actually who want to follow Allan on Instagram, you can find him at Allan Wexler Studio
Nice.
on Instagram. So definitely check that out. But I remember just seeing that recently, and I was like, oh,
Yeah,
wow.
just this last weekend, because I was just assembled that. I'm still working on the saucer, but it's extremely labor intensive, but I'm having a blast.
Well, what I love about that too is that I've always had trouble with when it comes to working with fabric and understanding how pattern becomes three-dimensional form, right?
Yep.
And my mother will attest to that because every time I want to do something in fabric, I call her up and I'm like, wait, how do I make that gusset to cause that to open up?
Yeah.
So it's that's my version to her of her asking me how to attach a photo in an email.
Pattern making.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and it's topology as well, the science of surfaces.
Yeah, exactly. Is understanding of flat dimensionality.
Which is a little bit like cubism. So it's cubism unearthed and becoming, inverting cubism. So imagine taking a Braque or a Picasso and returning it back to the breakfast table from the elliptical painting of a kind of skewed angle of a coffee table that's been flattened and then reconstructed again.
Right. I just realized I missed a comment in here. So John Park says, I love the idea that tools inspire. I feel the same. Is there, regardless of the tool, an underlying fabric of a process that doesn't vary as much, though?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Did I get it right? Because I don't have my glasses on. Hold on. I love the idea that tools inspire. I feel the same. Is there, regardless of tool, an underlying fabric, in quotes, of a
Oh.
process that doesn't vary as much, though?
Yeah, I probably think there is a way of working. The things that you get pleasure out of are constant. So you can move from a pencil to a Bosch jigsaw to a brush, and it's the use of that tool that inspires, and not specifically the tool, but it's what inspires. Often, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think I'm answering the question
No,
sufficiently.
I think I understand. I think I understand what you're saying, and I feel like there's an underlying foundation to that exploration. No matter what the tool is, there's something about the picking up of that new implement, right? And maybe exploring limitation or exploring, I always make a joke because I have an undergrad from Rutgers, and I always make a joke about that place because. And I take it very seriously, but they would not teach you how to use a hammer at Rutgers. They were so conceptual. And the reason being is they might limit your creative development in teaching you one way to use a hammer. Right? But there's something to that because if we pick up a new tool, there's a possibility we might discover a new way to use that tool and make something new.
Right.
I don't recommend experimenting with a 5-horsepower table saw, but there's possibility. So, well, listen, Allan, I don't want to keep you past the time I asked you to commit to, and
it's been a great pleasure. One
loved,
question.
Yeah.
How do we support you financially? Do you have a thing online?
Yes, we do actually, and I really appreciate
It's
you.
a little
asking
plug
that.
for you because
Thank you.
I don't have a lot, but I can give
Well, gosh, you're supporting me by being here. First of all, thank you for that. But on thelargeglass.org, our website, we have a section for support. There's a big blue button right there to support.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's wonderful. It's been such an honor to have this conversation with you, and I feel like and this is just my own selfishness talking right now, but I feel like I connect with you on so many making levels. And
I see that in your work as well.
Well, I really appreciate that, though, having you, in the world and having the privilege of meeting you and seeing what you do, and now especially more than ever talking to you. So thank you for that.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
And well, we hope you have a good time in Italy and you wrap up that Venice Biennale well.
Thank you.
And
So
send Ellen our love.
I will. Thank you very much.
Okay,
It's been a
Allan.
great pleasure.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Okay, everybody, we are going to give away that Susan Stillman painting. I think you answered it when you said that you take things from the everyday and then start experimenting with them. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, so the Susan Stillman painting must now go. And we've got a decent amount in the...
So we're not doing the wheel tonight.
We're not doing the wheel.
This is going to be... Okay.
This is going to be a true Twitch,
Okie dokie.
thing. All right, everybody, get ready. Here we go. All right, I'm going to click pick a winner. I have to, but wait. I'm going to delay. Everybody's like, no, just pick the winner. I have to tell you, I told my mom she wasn't allowed to participate. Mom, I'm sorry. I need to apologize to you, looking you right in the eye on the camera. I'm sorry. You've won too many things. And then when it comes up that you win, it looks like I fix it. You know that. And I appreciate you understanding, but I told you I'd make it up to you. All right, here we go, people.
I wish we had a drum roll.
Oh, we should have a drum roll.
We should have a drum roll. Okay.
Next time. All right, here we go, everybody. Picking the winner. It's going to be Carolyn Thau wins the Susan Stillman painting.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Carolyn. I don't even
so
know if Carolyn's
exciting.
still here. Oh, wait, she's here. She said,
She is.
thank you, Allan. Great show. That's good. Glenn says, hold on, Glenn is saying something. Not sure if you addressed the idea of doing collaborations. Has Allan collaborated with anyone? And if so, has his approach changed? Or is it essential to find someone with a like mind and aesthetic? Huh. All right, Glenn, I will ask him that, and I will get back to you on that.
Yes.
All right, so Carolyn, nice job on the painting there. Pumpkin Audrey says, what a great conversation. Thank you. Congrats, Carolyn.
Carolyn's saying me.
Me. John Park says, Allan is amazing. Loved the show. Thank you for that, John. I appreciate that. We think he is too.
Yeah.
So for those of you who didn't see it at the beginning,
Yes.
keep in mind, Absurd Thinking Between Art and Design. Great book. Great book. I'm not going to read another passage tonight because I feel like we have hit our time limit. But get this book. Also, there's another book floating around out there that I treasure. Okay, it's called Custom Built. Hard book to find.
You can't get it anymore.
No, you can get it. You can get it through like Abe Books. It's out there.
Okay.
But it's a fantastic book. It's got a fold-out poster in it. It's really quite nice. So pick that up. I'm going to get this out. So this is to Allan Wexler. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
To all of you, listen, next week on the show, another live artist. We have cabinet card artist Alex Gross coming on the show. We're super excited about that. That's going to be another awesome conversation. John Park just said, I just told Jess that your mom was going to win. Yeah, but she wasn't in it, John. So we're going to have to kick Carolyn out of the drawing soon, too. I think that's like our second or third win. Carolyn, your days are numbered. Just saying. All right, everybody. Listen, thanks so much for supporting and watching the show tonight. We hope you enjoyed it. Join us next week for Alex Gross. We will see you all then.
Yes.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.